Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It's a Sunday, 5:30 Eastern Time, February 10th, 2019. Very busy day across the U.S. weather-wise with three weather systems in play. Not just one, but we've got three of them to deal with. And the two of in the Northeast, one minor and one not so minor, kind of coming back to back. So I just want to clarify the two-part nature that's going to be occurring for some, but not all areas. And we're going to start off tonight with the slew of winter storm watches, winter weather advisories that are up in the Northeast, and even some preemptive winter storm warnings that you see up in upstate New York and northeastern New York and in Vermont that have already gone up for this weather system that's going to impact that area on Tuesday. Watches in all of Maine, New Hampshire, and also for much of New York State north of I-90, extending down into the Catskills. And then we have winter storm watches up for northeastern PA and then parts of south central Pennsylvania going westward, also covering north central Pennsylvania. The lead system tonight is producing winter weather advisories for northeastern Virginia up through Maryland, southern New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and into Delaware. This is going to be a relatively minor system, talking about on the order of maybe an inch or two, or maybe an inch or three in some places. Then, as we go to the west with the second system that's part of this whole equation here, this very messy equation, we've got winter storm watches up for parts of Iowa, southern Wisconsin, northern Michigan, winter weather advisories surrounding that, flood watches in the warmer air in the lower Ohio Valley, down to southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southeast Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, northern Tennessee, and much of the state of Kentucky. Meanwhile, out in the west, of course, they already had their first storm, and they've actually been seeing a series of systems coming in. Another one came through today. There's probably going to be another one coming in for early this coming week. And we've got winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and winter storm watches. It's very odd, by the way, to see Seattle, which finished up, depending on where, in and around Seattle, with 6 to 10 inch snowfall, to see the winter storm warning come down, and then the new winter storm watch that went up right after that. So here's the snowfall forecast, the snowfall analysis of what has fallen so far. I rolled it back 72 hours. The snows up here in the Northwest have been long duration. And if we get really close on Seattle itself, at least from the standpoint of the analysis done, 8 inches in and around Seattle. You can see some places to the northwest picking up as much as 30 inches in some of the mountains, and also to the east in Washington State, also some 18 to 24-inch amounts. Portland looked like it only got about an inch of snow, but just to the west, again, in elevation-driven areas, 30 inches plus. Also to the east, we saw some 8-inch amounts. And notice, by the way, a lot of the snowfall that occurred up and down right along the immediate coast. That really doesn't happen all that often. And those snows, by the way, extended south into Oregon, Medford getting about 2 inches either side of that, big amounts. And as we head down into Northern California, in some of the mountainous terrain up in the northwestern part of the state, some rather impressive snow amounts of up to 8 to 12 inches. And then, of course, in the Sierra Nevadas, we had some big snows here left over from a couple of days ago on the order of 3 feet. More snows up in the northern Rockies, and then going to the east. Again, this is all 72-hour snowfall. And the Great Lakes, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. If we reduce this to the last 24 hours, there hasn't really been all that much. Got a little bit of snow today in parts of western Iowa, eastern Nebraska, and also through parts of the Dakotas. So here's where we're going. Here's the Weather Service forecast, wide view, and then I'm going to show you the area that I cover. The snows in the east. So this is through Wednesday, 11 a.m., which pretty much carries it through much of the time frame of this storm, but not quite all of it for northeastern New England anyway. They probably will have some additional time with snow after 7 a.m. Wednesday. but some 1 foot plus amounts north of Albany. You're looking at 7 to 12 inches throughout much of Maine, back through New Hampshire, and also into Vermont. You go further south, you start to see the amounts come down a bit. Now you got to be a little careful when you get down into South Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, and into northern Maryland, because this is combining the system for tonight, which is going to be on the order of a coating to an inch or two, with the system for Monday night and for Tuesday for this area. And also, what complicates this forecast for a lot of spots here is the fact that we're going to see a change over to sleet. And it could sleet for quite a while. So that's going to really impact the total numbers as far as the sleet goes. Sometimes I've seen it where you could put down 2 or 3 inches of sleet and span it over a 5 or 6 hour time frame. That's an awful lot to get through. Around the Great Lakes, another foot possible in much of Wisconsin and up in parts of northern Michigan. A general, let's say, a 4 to 8 inch snowfall back through Minnesota, on up through northern Iowa. Chicago looking like it's sitting on a 4 target, in Milwaukee at about 6, and Detroit looks like it's sitting at a 2-inch target there. And then, of course, in the West, as we pile on the numbers here, 50-inch plus amounts in the mountains in eastern Washington, another 9 being targeted for Seattle. Amazing that this city it gets an average of only about 6 inches of snow a year. So it already took that out with the first system. Now it's getting another one, perhaps in terms of accumulation, it'll probably put down as much as the first system did. And you can still see heavy amounts going down into northwestern California, and some heavier amounts, but not extreme as you make your way south into the Sierra Nevadas. Now, let's come back to the east for a moment. I'm going to reset this map to Monday, and it'll load up, and I'll show you what the Weather Service is doing, at least for the first system, for tonight and Monday morning as it loads. And there you can see the numbers are generally about 1 to 2 inches. Again, that's why you have to kind of subtract. You have to subtract it out of the bigger numbers that you saw on the other map. The northern extent barely gets to New York City. I think that northern fringe is probably going to be on the order of a coating, and then you start to get into some, generally 1 to 2 inch amounts. It's going to depend on how the radar holds up. That earlier today looked pretty impressive, and there's still a lot on it that is moving eastward. Here's my forecast for New Jersey, south of Route 195. And also for southeastern Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia. I have Trenton just on the outside of this, back to about Reading, Lancaster, and then going southeast to about south of Atlantic City. I've got this 1 to 2 inch zone, and there's a chance that there could be a little bit of upside here, depending on whether the precip can get a little bit of ocean enhancement, which is always possible. And then we're looking at a coating to an inch just about everywhere else, and also pretty much an inch or two back west of the blue line through the rest of Pennsylvania and going westward. The black lines indicate probably the southern extent of just flurries, and also the black line that runs from coastal Connecticut. I might be a little generous here in pushing that northern fringe a bit further to the north, but I figured if there's a few snow showers around that quickly whiten the ground in this area, I might as well just toss it in there as far as putting it in the forecast. Now, the second system starting Monday night in southern Pennsylvania and in southern New Jersey, and then during the day on Tuesday. Now, this is where it gets really tricky. So I'm kind of going with the idea that these accumulation amounts will be a combination of snow and sleet. How much is snow and how much is sleet, I don't know. And that's a hard thing to figure. But I have the coast in about a 1 to 3 inch zone for central and eastern Long Island, and southeastern Connecticut into southern Rhode Island. And then I've got the 3-inch line running southwestward to about Bridgeport, from Providence to about Bridgeport, western Long Island, including New York City. New York City is to the west of that 3-inch line, and then run it down to Philadelphia, and then south and west from there. And I've got a zone in interior Pennsylvania, including Altoona State College, and going north and east from there up into New York State toward Binghamton. I've got a 5-inch plus zone of snow and sleet. This is going to change to rain, no matter what. This second system is going to change to rain from south to north. So it's going to be a matter of how fast does the warming occur, how much cold air does the low levels of the atmosphere are going to hold on to cold air a bit longer this time. At least it seems that way, but ultimately it is going to go to rain. Not too much going on the surface map in the east. We've got the latest cold high moving off the Delaware coast, and the leading edge of another high. You can see it here up through southern Canada, north of Minnesota and North Dakota, with some very cold air. And that cold air is going to be pushing into the east. And the zone in between, it's hard really to pick it out. There's a little bit of warm advection, warm air moving from point A to point B, and it's moving into this cold air that's over us now. So that's producing an area of precip. And then you start to see the lower pressures out to the west back through Colorado. From this, we're going to get the low that will be pushing to the east for Monday night and for Tuesday. So here's the radar tonight. And actually, it doesn't look all that shabby. When you take a look at it, there's quite a bit of precip, quite a bit of rain in southern Ohio, southern Indiana, back through Kentucky and into northwest Tennessee. This is where we have the flood watches up. And there's some snow up through parts of Michigan and northern most Indiana. And then there's a leading edge of some snow showing up on the radar now in southwestern PA and moving into western Maryland. So if this area holds together to some degree, I think we're going to put down those light amounts that we indicated in our forecast. Rain showers extend back down into northeast Texas. And then in the west, starting to see that next system in the Pacific Northwest here coming in with some snow into eastern Washington. And that is destined for Seattle in short order. All right, weather model time. And I've got the NAM snow map up here to start. This is for the east. This covers us for the overnight event into tomorrow morning. And I kind of pretty much agree with this idea. If you look carefully, there's some purple shadings down in South Jersey and even in parts of Northern Virginia that you wind up with a little bit more. I probably didn't extend the southern edge of that line enough, but I probably should have brought it down a bit further to the south. But you get the idea here. This is not going to be producing very much. And in the colder air in parts of Ohio, looking at some 3 and 4 inch amounts there and into western Pennsylvania. So let's take a look at where the surface is going here. I'm going to widen out to the full size so we can take a look at both coasts. And we'll roll it back. So here, this is let's jump to the 18Z, the latest run of the NAM. So this is its view. We are now coming up on 23Z. So this is the radar now. Let me push the radar back up. And you can compare it. So this is what the radar looks like in real life. And here's what the NAM looks like. We'll do it again. Radar and NAM. So they're pretty close. You got that northern edge of snow that goes back up into Wisconsin. And then you've got the rain area that extends down into northeast Texas. So it looks like the NAM has a fair representation of what's happening. And out in the west, of course, you can see the darker blue snows coming into Washington State with that next storm system. So here comes that first disturbance for tonight into tomorrow morning. The support on this is questionable, and that's why you kind of get those little holes that show up. There's the impact of the mountains. Some of the precip's going to try and dry up, and then some of it will get enhanced again from the ocean itself. This is at 5 a.m. The northern edge is kind of sinking southward here at this point. You still have the leftover east-west band of rain here from across Virginia and West Virginia. And now you're going to start that next high. You see how that next high builds in there south of James Bay. So that's the cold air kind of anchoring into the east. We're at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday. More snows out in the west. And there's your low, a 998 low in southeastern Colorado getting ready to move out. almost looks like a giant warm front really lifting northward into that cold high that sits around for a while. And see that it's holding. It's not really moving very much until we get into Tuesday. Then you start to see a solid band of snow and sleet. So here's how it just lingers there during the day on Monday, and then begins to expand a bit as we go into Monday night and Tuesday morning. That growing area of snow and sleet, getting into New York City. This is kind of tough. Models have been sort of going back and forth on bringing some snow in as early as sometime Monday night during the early morning hours on Tuesday. This run kind of held it off a bit, probably because of the idea that high holding it in. And then we get about 3 or 4 New York City anyway, and Long Island looks like about 3 or 4 hours of snow at most. Then it goes over to sleet. We're at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, raining from central New Jersey southward. Sleet and some freezing rain back through much of Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, over New York City, Long Island, and southern New England. I kind of go along with this idea. The deepening primary is now sitting in southern Lake Michigan. We talked during last week about the fact that the models were trying to develop some kind of secondary low, and we were arguing against that idea because of the fact that you basically had a ridge here in the east, and the trough was more in the west, so it was hard to see. A low would try to form, but it was hard to see what kind of traction it was going to be able to gain, and that certainly winds up being the case. There is lower pressure here off the Delaware coast. The importance of the secondary low is that it pinches off the warm air to some extent. So if you don't get a wrapped up, if you were to get a wrapped up low in here, that would just shut the warm air off. But it's not doing that. You're getting a little bit of pinching, but not enough. By 4 p.m., the rain sleet line looks to be just approaching New York City and north of Philadelphia and Trenton, but it still kind of struggles there in northern New Jersey, northeastern Pennsylvania, throughout southern New England, and into the Hudson Valley. It looks like it stays sleet for a long time, at least on the NAMS view. Ultimately, it does turn to rain by tomorrow evening, and you finally get this whole thing out of here. The sleet gets all the way up into upstate New York, into Vermont and Hampshire, but the rain is probably not going to make it that far north. It does shut off. And the same coastal Maine will probably get into some mixing here with the heavier snows inland. By the way, all of this happening while in the west, here comes the next energy. I mean, it's just sort of endless here. I'm going to go a little bit tight on the western U.S. and we'll go in the northwest. And you can watch this, this area of snow that's coming in now. That moves in, and now here comes another low. It's really been a train of these things, one after another. There's cold air in southern Canada with this deep trough, so more snow here on Monday into Monday night in Washington State, and then that moisture still around. And now, by the way, you've got this strong low that's coming in toward California, Northern California, by the time we get to Tuesday night into Wednesday, and that brings heavy rains and snows inland there. So this whole first part of this week, we're going to see quite a bit of snow out in the west. I'll extend this down further so we can take a look at the impact on California. And here's one low that comes in, and you can see there's another one on the lower left that's right behind it that is going to be moving along. And in the east, just to review, we'll take the eastern view, and we can get a close-up on this particular storm. So it's all really about the short range right now. So, but there it goes. There's your low. It's this low cuts, minimal redevelopment until you get to Tuesday night into Wednesday, where you'll probably see a bit more of a wrapped up low there near Boston. By then, of course, the precip's long gone, and it lifts up to the northeast. Looks like Nova Scotia is going to get a burst of heavy snow going over to sleet and then over to rain, or ending as a little bit of rain as the low moves away. And then you start to dry out with some lake effect snows coming in for later Wednesday and Wednesday night. So very, very busy short range view. I did another instructional video today. I talked about the snow maps. And I just want to show you how you have to be so careful with these things when you look at them at face value, because these are cumulative, so they don't break the two systems down. So if you didn't really know there were two systems, even though one is weak, you would think that this was all from one event. And the other thing is, these numbers don't take into account the fact that a lot of this precip's going to wind up being sleet. It's hard to envision how there's going to be 1.5 feet of snow out of this across Pennsylvania, where you see that greenish, the greenish blue or whatever color that is, across Pennsylvania into northern Maryland. There's going to be a lot of that sleet. You've got to really be very careful with the snow maps. They are, one useful way of looking at these things is to say, okay, this is where the extent of the snow is going to be, but I would never focus on the individual numbers. You have to do a lot of adjusting, which is what I did in my forecasts. The new GFS, we can take a look at that, see if it gives us any additional clues, because this is a situation for a lot of areas where an extra hour or two of snow or sleet could make a big difference as far as the accumulations are concerned. And let's roll it here. Here's your first system going out. The GFS hasn't been handling this too well. It's been showing next to nothing. Now it does have some snow there coming in for tonight into tomorrow morning. And then, of course, now you got this blossoming area for Tuesday morning. It also, on the last couple of runs, is not really showing a whole lot of sleet with this. And with that, it may not be correct. There probably will be more. The earlier runs were showing a much larger area of sleet. For some reason, this run, the last couple of runs have not. It might be a function of the fact that it has the surface low, the primary low, a little bit further east than the NAM does, bringing in a bit more in the way of warmer air. So I wonder if that's questionable. The systems have been cutting pretty far to the west, so I don't know why the GFS has suddenly decided to cut the low further east, a little further east this time around. And there's you see your changeover to heavy rain. It goes out and done, and now you can watch these systems just continue to come into the west, one after another as we head through the rest of this week. Here's let's just roll it back here. So here's your system for Monday. Big one into California coming in on Wednesday. Doesn't really show the one behind it so much. It looks like it weakens it. And then, of course, as we go into next weekend, guess what? There's another system that's coming out of the Rockies, and it's going to take a similar track, only this time around there's not going to be much in the way of cold air. So you've got rain out of this. Does develop a nice secondary coastal low there, but there's not a whole lot of cold air for it to work with even on the backside as it lifts up into Canada. And it's hard. You look at these model runs from day to day, and you keep seeing them continually trying to bring snow events to the coastal Northeast or down into the Mid-Atlantic. And I'm still waiting for the first one to happen. So it's almost a futile exercise to watch the GFS in its long range, because it just seems to be making, it just makes the same errors over and over again. The primary pattern, as we look in the long range, we're just going to look at this quickly tonight. The primary pattern in the long range really remains unchanged. Just starting from this weekend, deep trough in the west, ridge in the east, and the system that comes out lifts well up to the left, and then that pulls out, get more ridging. The trough dives down. It dives down at about 90 west this time around instead of being at the Rockies. Still too far west to be a big snow threat for the coastal Northeast. And then that lifts up. And then now you're left with, here we are at day 9. Guess what? Flat ridge in the east, deep trough out in the Rockies again. It's hard for me to envision how we're going to get into any kind of a pattern that would be favorable for a big snow. I mean, the only thing I would say is that you might have a setup similar to this one developing in the long range, but as far as anything more bullish than that, I would tend to shy away from it. All right, let me come to Sunday evening. Let me just come up to the chat board, say hi to everybody. We got a nice crowd here tonight. A lot of my regular Patreon folks are on, and I see you guys are just chatting away. I'm not showing any buffering issues here on my end, so it might be on your end. Getting a lot of folks on the chat. It's all playing catch up on the chat here. Let's see. What's the European say about all this? Local forecasts say the Euro Rob SP32. The Euro and the one of the things about the European and the icon, but particularly the icon, when you look at it, my understanding is that the icon doesn't show sleet and freezing rain. The European did hold the cold air a bit longer. It's like the NAM and the so that would argue for a bit more in the way of snow. I don't think there's a whole lot of upside here because eventually the cold air is going to retreat. So the big key to total snow amounts or snow versus sleet will be the timing of the changeover, and that's going to be tough to figure. The ratio. Is it going to snow for you put down a quick inch or two or a coating to an inch, and then it goes to sleet, and the bulk of your accumulation is sleet? I don't know. That is that's a good question. I wish I knew the answer to it right now. Maybe I can get a better clue on this for tomorrow in terms of timing. I did notice that the low levels of the atmosphere earlier today, when I looked at it, was fairly cold. I'm going to just take a look right now. By the way, I did notice that did temporarily lose the signal there, so my apologies. Just want to check the. I'm going to check the NAM, the numerical data on the NAM, and I mean, it's by 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, it should have gone to sleep. The low levels of the atmosphere at LaGuardia still showing a temperature of -2, okay, Celsius. It's -2, -5, +4, so that would be sleet. It gives 4/10 of an inch of liquid during the morning hours. So if you want to say that maybe half to 3/4 of that is snow before it goes over to sleet, that would argue for about a 1 to 3 inch snowfall for LaGuardia, maybe closer to the 3 than the 1 before it changes over. Philadelphia gets Philadelphia gets a little bit more liquid because it gets overnight. It gets 1800s from the first system, another 4 during the day. So let's throw that out. So, an inch, a coating to an inch or two from the overnight system. Then it gives 1200s, 15, 2700s. And then you start to lose it after that. So it would say that maybe Philadelphia winds up with 2 or 3, or possibly push it to the upper end of 4 before it changes over to sleet, and then to freezing rain, and then ultimately to rain. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 0, 0, and +6, so that's 32, 32, and you go up to the higher levels of the atmosphere, it's well above freezing. So that would either argue for sleet or possibly just freezing rain. So I think right now I'm feeling pretty good about my overall forecast here. I'm not going to stray from it too much. That was my early call for yesterday, and that is where I'm going to leave it for the time being. Long Island tonight, Robert Hurley. The northern edge might get here on the radar for an hour or two. It is bone dry. The dew points are down close to 10, as you point out. So it's quite possible that just all stays aloft and never really makes it to the ground. If we wind up with a snow shower that quickly whitens the ground, consider it a gift, the way the pattern has been. Certainly for New Jersey, you get down south of Route 195, that first system's going to generate, an inch or two. But we've seen a few of those already this winter. The few storm systems we've had, they've all seemed to impact that particular area. Nice to see you on board, Chris Alley. Bob Rutherford, East Coasters have had a horrible wet spring summer, lots of clouds, relentless overcast, as you remember. God, that's for sure. And the humidity was absolutely out of control. Let's hope that they usually don't tend to repeat back to back, and let's hope not. Sometimes they do, but most times they don't. So maybe the spring and summer will be a bit different then and into the fall will be a little bit different than it was last year when the humidity was just so out of control. Just looking at your some of your comments here. Steve Moran with the low cutting, snow probably over to freezing rain. Wouldn't be a shocker up your way. Any models? Dio Dan Kumar wants to know any models on the same. They're all about the same. Well, there's some differences between them, but they're not that far apart. So to me, the European and the NAM kind of look about right. The GFS to me has been a difficult model to work with. The parallel GFS has been absolute garbage. I don't even want to use it anymore, I haven't seen it run since. I'm sure it's run. It's around somewhere, but I haven't even bothered to look at it. It just it did some really crazy things with the system in the long range, so it's not. It isn't even worth our time. Christopher Chevchik, am I going to do a final call with the Patreon members? We'll do that tomorrow. I, from what I'm seeing, unless there's a radical change in the models overnight, I'm probably going to leave everything the same. Izzy D, I've got the 1 to 2 inch line just south of Lakewood. Well, it might sneak up. The 1 inch line might sneak up to about you. Keep an eye on the radar. The radar really is going to tell the story here tonight. The radar doesn't look all that unimpressive to me. So, if that moisture holds on and doesn't fall apart when it comes eastward and hits the mountains, you should be, you might get something out of this. Tammy Lewis, is there going to be a winter, is there going to be a winter? I'm thinking you're thinking winter. They have winter storm watches up, I believe, for the Lehigh Valley and Allentown. As I showed that earlier at the beginning, and there might be some more adjustments. By the way, there were winter storm watches up for southern PA, for Lancaster, York County westward, but right now the prevailing winter weather advisory is what you wind up seeing on the map. But if you were to click on that zone, you'll see that they actually do have winter storm watches up for parts of southeastern and south central Pennsylvania. Guess waiting for that winter weather advisory. Once they get rid of that, and then they can bring the watch up front and center. So, all right, I think we're gonna leave it there. Union City looks drier for tonight. Adam, you're on the edge. Talk to me on Messenger. But yeah, you're on the edge with that. I got you in the coating to maybe an inch. Watch the radar, and we'll see. If it holds. That radar again doesn't look unimpressive to me. So maybe we'll get a little lucky, and that northern edge will get enhanced a little bit. The RGEM model and the Canadian model have been further north with all of this, and bring the one inch line close to New York City. I usually like to use the RGEM in these short range situations. Let's see. So you've got Anthony. What is the reasoning for no winter storm watch in Allentown, but a winter storm watch up for places around Allentown? I'm not sure. Elevation, maybe. This is a tough. It's not just the snow, it's also the sleet and freezing rain that they're incorporating into it. So maybe around Allentown, and perhaps they're thinking, some of the more urban areas are going to see a bit less as opposed to the rural ones. But I'm not 100% sure why they did that. That's a good Weather Service question. I just want to see something here. Let me just pull the map up. Yeah, they kind of have it snaking around. When you looked at the, you have the areas, the watches kind of snaked around. If you look at the way some of the snow maps have lined up, the way they put the winter storm watches kind of match up with how the snow maps have the snow areas oriented. Maybe the forecasters that made the forecast looked at those maps and decided, okay, I'm going to do it that way. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to really read through all of the discussions. Joe, you saw on the maps I got for Long Island. I mean, I've got Long Island in a 1 to maybe 3. If you're going to have the 3-part, it would probably be in West Nassau. That was my early call, and I'm going to leave it there as far as the prediction's concerned. I didn't see any reason to change it either way. I'm just going to watch those low-level temperatures, and the low and mid-level temperatures through all of this are going to be key in how it turns out. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to go to rain, so it's all going to get washed away. So I guess for the snow lovers, just enjoy it, whatever you get while it lasts, and that's it. All right, we're going to leave it here at this point, folks. Have a great night. Those of you who are interested, a great way to support my channel is to join my platform on Patreon. Patreon is a great way to support what I'm doing here on YouTube and with my websites and the stuff I'm doing on Facebook. It's just $2 a month, and you get live streams just for Patreon members. We did one this morning. Had to do it twice because we had internet issues this morning with the that provides the internet around here. Decided this morning was a good time to do some repair work, so some people were taken down from time to time. And anyway, it's $2 a month. You can check the link out on the descriptor of this live stream or the descriptor to this video if you're watching it on a replay. Normal schedule tomorrow, so live stream at 7 o'clock on YouTube. The Joe and Joe show tomorrow night on Facebook at 9:20. And we'll keep you up to date, of course, with all the latest on this with posts along the way. So be sure to check out my website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.